Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can send questions and comments to the Facebook live stream. Good evening to all watching on Facebook Live. If not, we'll see you on the flip side. And for those watching live on YouTube, so good evening to our YouTubers as well. You know me, my name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia. And we have a mighty full house tonight, so without further introductions, I'll go over to you, Juan. Juan, good evening. Not yet.
Good evening, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast. Look me up on Monday. I got some really awesome episode coming up.
Monday.
Monday.
All right. Looking forward to it. Next up, Mike the Intern. Good evening, Mike.
Hey, Mike the Intern here. Junior Warden to be installed and Lodge Education Officer at Lakeshore Lodge number 307 in Madison, Ohio. Good evening, everyone.
Awesome, and congrats. Next up,
Thanks.
Jason Richards. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Mike. We call that Junior Warden elect. It's okay. You'll get the terminology from, Virginia. Hey, everybody. Jason Richards. Past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Jason. Popping in just in time, Robert Johnson. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
We're good.
I'm well.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
for asking.
Sorry, I had an audio engineer over here literally just working on this setup. So everything's great. Hosted Whence Came You podcast, all that other stuff. Thanks. Sorry.
Excellent.
Blah, blah, spes novum, blah, blah.
Do stuff and things. Last but not least, our special guest for this evening, that would be Worshipful Brother, Shelby Chandler. Shelby, lay us down your Masonic biography, your Masonic resume.
Well, first of all, thank you, brethren. Greetings. My name is Shelby Chandler. I am past master of Fredericksburg Lodge in Virginia, Lodge number 4. I was the charter master for the George Washington Lodge of Research, 1732, in 2012, and I am currently the district education officer for the 8th Masonic District in Virginia, and I serve at the will and pleasure of the Grand Master on his committee on history.
Well, that's exciting.
That should be my new lodge.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I have a new title, under my tool belt this go around, since this past weekend was our grand annual communication down in Richmond, Virginia. I'm now the chair of the membership committee, so it gives me a lot of work and a lot of emails to go through. But looking forward to making data great again and trying to get this membership boat turned around. So that'll be fun to dig into over the next year or so.
And I haven't been fired off of the Public Relations Committee yet.
Keep trying.
I'll work on it.
I heard from some guys at the Grand Lodge of Virginia just over the weekend that they thought you should be fired. So, I mean, you got that going for you, which is nice.
That's fair.
News travels fast.
Yep.
Yep.
Wasn't ready to announce that yet, Robert.
Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about a topic that is relevant to this week's events. That is, if you're watching us live, we're recording this the week of Veterans Day. So we just had Veterans Day on Monday, where we honor all of those who have served. And there is a Veterans and Active Duty membership affinity lodge called the National Sojourners, which we'll get into how it operates, the history, and all of that. And so, without further ado, Brother Shelby, will you please kind of tell us what is the National Sojourners?
Well, essentially, National Sojourners is an independent body of Freemasonry that consists of brothers who are active or have served and retired military Masons, and they also Master Masons who are honorary members, and it's for the purpose of bringing together those who have served, those patriotism and what we do is we help out. We serve Masonry and we serve the military cause and defense and support of military personnel, as well as any interest of the government. It seems like that it's the focus is a lot more on nationalism, but it's actually Americanism. It's the support of the cause of everything that the United States represent. And when you take the politics out of it, at its core, it's a very good. Its values are they are in line with Masonry.
It's a good thing we don't talk about politics in Masonry.
I actually have a question then for you. It sounds like what you're describing is an emphasis on what I would call, I guess not Americanism, but the idea of truly being civics in a way.
Well, yeah, it's military is pretty much service. You are taking, you're writing a check with no price, with no a blank check, and the Uncle Sam can cash it in up to the full amount. That's service. Basically, there are other forms of service as well, but in the end, the kind of people that you get out of National Sojourners are those who are service oriented and care about not only their country but the people around them.
So citizen, like true citizenship, being a citizen.
Well, yeah,
fair?
I mean, active citizenship is very important. One of the things that our founding fathers did not want us to do.
Is this more just in line with military then, or is it blending?
Well, basically, it's more about patriotism, but we also share that patriotism through our shared military experience. Is what it is.
So that's really good. That's a good clarification, because while you've established the values of the organization, that it has to be, it is a Masonic organization, and it has military members in it. Are there requirements to either join or affiliate?
Yes. If you have served honorably, in other words, if you have an honorable discharge, or if you're currently serving honorably, you are entitled to be a full member. If you are a non-military personnel or just a Master Mason who wishes to support and is very patriotic, you could join as an honorary member. And the only difference between an honorary member and an active member is the fact that you can't become a national officer.
Right. So
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, not unlike how, like we have in Virginia, we have dual membership of lodges, and really the only benefit of joining another lodge as a full-on member versus just visiting is you can't ballot and you can't hold office. You know,
yeah, pretty much.
Full member, so not unlike that.
Well,
right.
Even in
some Grand
Virginia,
Lodges. I was just say some Grand Lodges, like you can't be Grand Master unless you're DMLA.
Never heard that.
Never heard of that.
I haven't heard that one either.
It's a
but the idea is that
folks.
but the idea here is that it's in a lodge you can actually be an officer and not be a member, but in Virginia anyways. But the thing is that in Sojourners you can do any officer position within the chapter, just not a national. You can't be a line officer. It's just the way it's designed based off its history.
So there is a national level organization to all of this then?
Oh, yes. Currently, we have as our national officer, the national president is Lieutenant Colonel William Haynes from Pennsylvania. You have President-elect Colonel Robert Roth. Basically, you have a first vice president, second vice president, so on and so forth. But they served the organization at a national level. So then you have your area and regional officer who takes care of more than one chapter. And then, of course, you have the local chapters. And they support their local area that they're in. Like my particular chapter 545, is in Fredericksburg. And any lodge that's close to that area, we're open to their needs. They wish to join us. One of the great things about it is there's a lot of military bantering going on. The branches different branches, people from different branches get together. They go back and forth with each other. It's like over at my lodge, we get a lot of Marines because the Quantico is so nearby. And I'm like, Worship Master, I'm like, don't we have a quota on Marines? So I had to say it. I'm Army, so.
That's
the Lejeune Lodge was full.
The Lejeune Lodge was full.
Well, I mean, Lejeune also, because there's so many active Marines. They have to maintain their line different ways from other lodges, because sooner or later somebody's going to be leaving, and 5 years to go through a line like I did in Fredericksburg is not going to happen for a lot of them. So they have to work it out with different means.
That's true. So could you tell us a little bit about the history? How did this whole thing get started? Like how was it founded?
Okay. Well, it started over in the Philippines, to be exact, around the early 1900s. We just went through a war with Spain, took away their total empire, and ended up with all of these different countries. And one of the places that we were focused on was over in the Philippines. And essentially we were there with the North Dakota regiment that left, took their field lodge dispensation with them. So the Masons got together and started forming a Sojourners Club. And basically they would attend meetings together, and they would be armed. They probably at times would be shot at during that time, but eventually they got together. They started raising money, and they started to support other lodges locally, and established a lodge. And even one of the members, if I remember correctly, became the first Grand Master of the Philippines. But that's where it started. Eventually, all the military Masons came back, and when it got home, what we call CONUS, continental United States, the officers took over the organization and made it their own. I guess there was an idea about not fraternizing with enlisted men, which is not really, I mean, I understand it from a military point of view, but from Freemasonry, we are on the level. And that started one of the things that we've had to work with over time to get that resolved to where it would be unacceptable to have anybody who was Master Mason. And that took time, but eventually it happened. So I guess one of the things is over time they started losing membership. So they brought in warrant officers, and then over time, again, they had the same problem. So they brought in senior NCOs. The mindset was that they believed that they were one of the premier leadership organizations. I know that they have some great leaders, but at the same time, Freemasonry, as I told them, have leaders from all fields of human endeavor. And the National Sojourners is part of that legacy.
Right.
So, they need to acknowledge Freemasonry as well.
So
they have medical field, science, exploration. We have leaders from every field there is.
So, brother Shelby, we have a number of veterans organizations between like the VFW and the American Legion. Could you talk to us a little bit about what perhaps makes the National Sojourners a different organization, and kind of how it's similar to some of these other groups?
Well, it's similar in the sense that it brings together military veterans and active duty members. They promote the causes of the United States. Americanism is what we call it. One of the major differences is that we are Master Masons, every one of us. You served, or if you're an honorary member, you have the cause of patriotism you want to support. And that is the one thing that binds us together. There has always been a concern that we were just going to be another American Legion, and there's already one that does exemplary work. But the one thing that we try to focus on is the fact that we are Master Masons, and we try to focus on supporting not only the cause of the United States and the military, but of Masonry as well. There is a bond between Freemasonry and military that's not just the United States. I mean, it's all over the world. I mean, the reason why Masonry came to the United States was because of the British Army and Navy. They came right in here, and they were the first Masons into the New World. So there is a close bond, and we like to make sure that we nurture that bond. It's what we call a bridge of light, to take what we do and to take our organization and interact with other organizations in Freemasonry, the Blue Lodge, the Eastern Star, the youth groups, and we do so with awards, presentations. We have flag programs that we do, like the Toast of the Flag, like Building the Flag, historic flag programs. We have a flag program for flags that we, when the flag is torn up, how you dispose of it, the proper way to do so, and we also do a lot of programs on history.
I'm glad you're getting into some of the specifics of like forms and ceremony, because that's another thing I'm interested in learning more about is what do you guys do? Like if you're just Masons who are almost an affinity lodge,
Right.
Are there other things that you do as far as ceremonies, customs, things you do, your public events, public ceremonies that are different than what a normal lodge would see, and
educational programs? Yeah.
Yes, and I actually will get into that. What you're going to find with National Sojourners, it's one of the few Masonic organizations where when you have the meeting, you can have it out in the open among family members. You can bring your wives, you can bring your kids, and you can actually have the meeting in front of everybody. It's open. The National Sojourners chapters, you can have friends come over and they can get an idea of it. One of my guest speakers that I introduced was my old roommate, who's an Air Force veteran, and he's very active in some of the causes that are tied to the United States government. And we gave him a chance to speak. But once again, we can have meetings out in a restaurant. And a lot of times we prefer a closed back door, back room where we can actually have some privacy, because we do have. When we give an oath, and we agree to that oath every meeting, and that is the cause of the military, our country, and of Masonry, and we agree each meeting to abide to those obligations. So there is, and we do the Toast of the Flag as well. I don't know if you ever saw the toast. Anybody not seen the Toast of the Flag? Basically, okay, you've seen it. Okay. What happens is we have a subgroup within Sojourners called the Heroes of 76. It's an invitational honorary organization. Basically, you are invited in for doing something exemplary that has to do with military service, something to do with your country, or something to do with Masonry. But basically, once you're invited in, we put you through a degree, and the degree teaches you what it means to truly be a Hero 76, basically understanding the things that you've done for your service is actually a service. We get to the core of that, but I'm not going to go into deep at that. But basically, once you're part of the Heroes of 76, you actually wear a uniform. It's a lot of people think it's a costume, but it's not. It's an actual uniform. It's a colonial uniform. Based to the timeline on that degree is based upon the American Revolution. And so that uniform is tied to the American Revolution. And you'll see people wearing the Virginia Blues. You'll see them wear the Colonial Marines. A Marine, you will almost always try to go after a Colonial Marine. It's the green and white uniform. But basically, with those uniforms, we do programs and we do color guard service. We also do a lot of, as National Sojourners, not the heroes, we actually do a lot of JROTC programs with the high schools. And we're very active throughout Virginia in that, where we go to different high schools and we offer presentations of awards for academic leadership and patriotism, and you have to achieve a certain amount. But basically, we work it out with the people in charge of the JRTC programs at the high school. And there's a few others that we do as well. What's that?
I was curious now, though, is that open? That invitational, is that open to your honorary members as well, or not likely? Just curious.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I did a lot of that as an honorary member because when I first joined National Sojourners, I was not a senior NCO. In fact, I almost did not join because of that. But one of the leaders of National Sojourners, he told me, look, join. He goes, it's a lot. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a lot easier to be inside the tent pissing out than outside trying to piss in. And so, he told me that if I got in a position where I can change the rules, then do so. And in fact, that's what happened. We ended up having a 10-year stint there where there was a drive to change the resolution from just anything from senior NCO up to anybody who served honorably. And it happened as of 2016. And we now have anybody who served honorably. And that's a full membership. So yeah, it's a worthy cause though, because we do scholarships as well, and we also support a lot of the programs. Like during the 100th anniversary of the Boy Scout Jamboree, National Sojourners was there. We were doing a program for them, and we've done that for different legacy organizations such as the SAR, Sons of the American Revolution, the DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution. We have done color guard for the Grand Lodge. We have done color guard for the James Monroe celebration. We are very active in a lot of these ceremony programs. But an example of one of the programs would be like someone in colonial uniform with their tricorn on, and they're in front of the American flag, and they go right into the toast of the flag, which is basically he looks at the flag and he says, "What can I say to you, old flag? You are so great in every fold, so linked with mighty deeds of old, so calm, so still, so firm, so true. My throat swells at the very sight of you, old flag." And then you go right into the toast. "Here's to the red of it. Here's not a thread of it, nor a shred of it, and all the spread of it from foot to head. But heroes have bled for it, face steel and lead for it, precious blood shed for it, bathing it red." I mean, I can go on if you want me to, but go on, okay. And then you go, "Here's to the white of it, grilled by the side of it. Who knows the right of it, but feels the might of it through day and night. Womanhood's care for it, made manhood dare for it. Purity's prayer for it, keeps it still white. Here's to the blue of it, beauty's view of it, heavenly hue of it, star-spangled dew of it, constant and true. Diadems gleam for it, states stand supreme for it. Liberty's beam for it, brightens the blue. And here's to the whole of it, the stars, stripes, and pole of it, body and soul of it. Oh, and the roll of it, sun shining through. Hearts in accord for it, swear by the sword for it, thanking the Lord for it, red, white, and blue." And that's one of the shortest programs we give.
That's awesome.
Love that poem.
But we memorize programs like that and we present it. We will also do programs on some of the heroes of the American Revolution, military personnel, anything that has to tie to masonry and military. We will also do programs on that as well. I've done a program on General Hugh Mercer. Most people don't know who he is. He was George Washington's best friend at the time. He died at the Battle of Princeton so early in the war, but most people don't realize he was just as famous back then as Washington was. and he just died so early in the war. And he was a Mason. He was very important to Virginia, but so on and forth. So we do a lot of programs. We go out to the schools. We do some of our Build the Flag program, where we will build the flag and tell you all about it. We will show you some of the historic flags, and we do a lot of education as well. And like I said, a lot of times we share a military experience.
Yeah, that build the flag program is fantastic. I actually had the Heroes of 76 come out my year in 2017, and I actually had Jim Newcomer come out and do that program for us for our July stated, and it's just such great American history just wrapped up into what is, a 10-15 minute program, just talking about the different iterations of our colors. And it's if anybody has the opportunity to go see that ceremony and that program, I recommend you do it, because you'll get so much rich history on the United States and what the actual flag means. It's phenomenal.
Well, I encourage anybody to go to some of their meetings as well. Like I said, it's open. Yeah,
Robert,
just talking.
Oh, I was just gonna say, every year, when I was an officer at Waukegan, 78, going through the chairs and attending 8 years of installations before I was put in that chair, we opened every single installation. The master gavelled everybody up, regardless of whether you were not a Mason or not. And a guy named Hardy Evans, who was he's a National Sojourner, and I didn't put it together then, but he would get up and he did this thing called the Ode to the Flag. And it's and maybe it's just a regional flavor here in Illinois, but I had never seen that done in any other lodge installation. And I was like, why is it only Waukegan that does this? And it just turns out that we had a really active National Sojourner here in our lodge, and he did this Ode to the Flag every year, and people would come out and they'd see it, and they would request that he go, and do that other lodge installations. I just thought, it was, say what you will, right? Like we joke all the time about being super proud, America, and we joke about bacon, eggs, and AK-47s, or, and, whatever firearm of choice is. But the fact is, like, there is a certain amount of what you called Americanism, right? Like that you do feel like patriotism, pride for the country, pride that we're such a melting pot of people, and the success boils up. And we had this line in the George Washington National Masonic Memorial published. I think they published it. It was a George Washington birthday memorial, birthday celebration ritual thing, and in it says, the United States, a country that's so great that so many other countries tried to emulate. And it just kind of speaks to that whole idea. It's really interesting,
Well, ask yourself this: right before the United States was established, how many other countries had the liberties that we had? It was basically a lot of. If you actually look at the core of the United States, a lot of it is. I'm not saying that the United States is a Masonic country. What I'm saying is a lot of the principles stem from the Enlightenment, and many people in time, as a historian, many people at the time called Masons the priest of the age of reason. And basically, a lot of the principles are deeply integrated. What we now know as Masonic principles are American values. If without all the politics and all the party fighting, at its core, it's a very honorable and very respected values of the equality of man. Looking to the best interest. Now, of course, the politics of it and the way. The transition from what we started as to what we now are took time, took a lot of wars, took a lot of fighting, a lot of law changes. But at the core of the United States and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution was all the tools necessary to make those changes. And what we have to understand as a people, that change don't happen real fast. I mean, a lot of people look back and say, oh, some of the things they did was terrible. But the thing is that each of those things were stepping stones to where we now are, and the liberties that people have, and and it's an ongoing struggle. So Americanism is a good thing. If you think about it, a lot of these countries that now have the liberties that they have now, because they emulated a lot of the things that we did. They emulated, or they took bits and pieces of what they thought was best for them. But since the United States, the majority of the world is now free, and people have rights now. In many of them, there's still a lot of other countries that do not. It's a work in progress, but it started with the United States. And to be honest, a lot of those things stem from the fact that the British the English started off with the English Civil War. They were starting to make changes like that, but it fell through after they brought the crown back, and then they had to wait till the Glorious Revolution before they can even bring in Masonry, let alone other liberties. Over time, the United States was the one that got the upper hand in doing that because of how things transpired. But it's still, since the United States, the majority of the world has been freed. Like I said, people don't take the time to understand that these changes take time.
So can I ask a difficult question? Are you okay with it? So I'll breach kind of a hard one. One of the things that we deal with in the fraternity, like when I would talk to one of my mentees at work, I asked him about joining the Masons at one time, and he had no interest, right? Because he felt that we're kind of antiquated in our ways or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, I understand that. But so from the outside looking in, and maybe there's not as much spotlight on it because it's an appendant organization within the craft, but has the National Sojourners dealt with, or have they had to address internally issues about like the current political climate in the United States in relation to like rampant nationalism? I noticed you use the term Americanism, which I think is fantastic, right? Because it drives home the idea. I get chills even thinking about it, right? Like the American experiment and the success that we have.
The thing is, the fact of the matter is that
have you dealt with any of that?
Okay.
Well, first of all, have you dealt with
the idea of nationalism? I don't have a problem with, but I think that Americanism takes it one step further to give it focus on this particular nation. And nationalism is something that happens for each country. I have no problem with nationalism in the sense that it's saved us in 2 different world wars. I think that how you apply it is what is the problem. But nationalism is basically a love of the idea of what your country represents, even if it's not your government. It's the things that your country as a people aspire to, even if the government doesn't follow with it. But a lot of times they do come and coincide, and that's when you get a lot of kind of like what happened at 9/11 when everybody came together. That's one of those moments when the people and the government were in sync. And that happens for other countries as well. But with the United States, that's for a lot of us, that's our country. And you actually can feel it at that point in time. And that's what Americanism is when you are doing all the right things. Because I am a firm believer that when the United States does all the right things, the world benefits. Simple as that. And we do really have a central part in the world because we started off as one of the first microcosms of the world. And we have our soldiers are taught to, that things happen in war, but we are taught that we are defending the freedoms of not just ourselves, but other people as well. And that is impressed upon us as a military organization. And that is inspiring.
Which is a great way to look at that because, nationalism is a totally different thing. Nationalism, you're interested in your own country, but it's actually more to the detriment of all other nations. In other words, your interests supersede all of theirs, and that's where nationalism is different than what we're talking about with our Americanisms. Our
Well, it
Americanism
doesn't
is
have
we
to,
are
though.
here.
Yeah. So what I think Hammy's getting to, and part of Robert's question is, there's the line somewhere between outright patriotism and becoming so infatuated that it's at the cost of the cost of other countries, and you
And I agree. There's
say
some countries, nationalism, like in the Soviet Union, nationalism could be a detrimental thing for people, especially people like Americans. The thing is that it depends. Nationalism, how detrimental it is to people or beneficial, depends on the ideology of that nation, and that's the problem. And they can change with time. So I think that's what you're trying to impress upon.
And that's really what I was saying. Is that's why I say I think it's great that we actually in National Sojourners, you guys call it Americanism, because you're not just speaking about, yes, it's about our country, America, but you're also covering the idea that, with our military, we're fighting for everyone's freedom, whether they're Soviets or Russians, whether they're French or Belgium or Chinese, or, we're fighting for everyone's freedoms.
Yes.
And that's the truth of it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the idea about Americanism. I think the reason why it stands out is because since we are such a microcosm, we have invested interest in the rest of the world. When we're doing well, the world's doing well. I do believe that. I believe that the things that we do for ourselves also is to the best interest of the world. But we still have to make sure that we are doing things for the right reasons in everything we do. And one of the things about National Sojourners is that because we are all Master Masons, we have given an obligation to look out for the best interests of people around us, be the Masons or not. And I think that translates into National Sojourners rather nicely.
So, another change of topic. Now, you and I talked a little bit beforehand, and
yes,
you recently introduced some rule changes, some like maybe you could say overdue changes to the structure of the organization, especially when you talk about how the rank and hierarchy and who can be members and the whatnot. So what happened and what was leading up to it, and what's changed?
Well, that wasn't recently. That actually was a 10-year process. Basically, in 2007, I saw the first national resolution on membership, and that didn't go too well. And like I said, when I joined, I was told that if I had the opportunity to make changes, that I should try to do so. Well, I became the president of my chapter, and one of the first things I did is I got everybody together and asked them what they feel about changing the rules. And the super majority of the members wanted to see a change to honorary members. And there was a movement also to bring it down to E5 and above, going from E7 to E5, bringing it down just a little bit more.
Enlisted.
Because E5s are still considered NCOs, non-commissioned officers. They're still leaders. We wanted to see honorary, because one of the things I realized is that the strength of National Sojourners is not in its leadership, but rather in its patriotism and in its shared military experience. So basically, we came up with a resolution and we promoted it, and it didn't go too well the first time around. We learned from the mistakes of that one. Came around again in 2013. We pretty much promoted the same resolution. It's how we started communicating with other chapters that made the difference. And it got a little closer and failed. But and notice it's in increments of 3 years. That's because there's a resolution out there that says any changes to membership has to wait 3 years before the next resolution can come out. And in Greenville, South Carolina, in 2016, we were in contact with other chapters. We explained to them also that your delegates is based off of the percentage of your membership, not just one or two. So they were able to bring more people and have more votes, and they were able to turn it over. And I understand why they didn't want to change, because a lot of the people still believe that there should be a separation between officers and enlisted men. That's something that's been practiced in the military from the beginning. And there is a reason for that, a purpose behind it in the military. But we as Freemasons, and I'm one of the people in this line, believe that we are all on the level. And there was an experience that I had when I was training. I came up with an education program in Virginia that educated people becoming Master Masons. And one of the things I was talking in a classroom of people of entered apprentice and fellowcraft, and I noticed that there was two that were at a distance from each other. One was a captain and one was a sergeant. And they had that, I could tell they had this separation there, and they were maintaining that. And I was trying to convey a message that they are brothers and they should, they meet on the level. And so what I did is I remembered from the National Sojourners a picture of George Washington sitting in the north. And it looks, in the appearance of the picture, is that the drummer boy was sitting in the east. And I told them this story, and explained to them that in Masonry, we all meet on the level. We are equals. Once we go out into the world, our social duties come back into play. But while we're here in the lodge, we're together. And the captain turned around. He got it right away. He told the sergeant, as long as we're here, you're my brother. And the relationship between the two became not only better, but it has been maintained. And my relationship with that captain is maintained to this day. But he got it right away. He understood. And it was from that picture from National Sojourners that made me think about that. So it really is to the benefit of Freemasonry, in my opinion. But yes, the resolution allowed to go from senior NCOs to all who have served honorably. And I think that's more fitting for the organization, because like I said, it's not about their leadership. That's Freemasonry. They are part of that, yes, but it is about our patriotism and our shared military experience. And through that, we can actually, I think, make a better world. And we teach active citizenship, and what better way to express that than from your own military experience as well. Because the United States was never meant to just be a citizen. You got a label and you can go vote. It was actually, you actually participated and you contributed, not only just in the government, but in civic duties as well. Go out and help the poor, try to go to the soup kitchen to help out, try to contribute to those in need, look out for each other. And these are all what I consider active citizenship. Not just saying you're American and every once in a while going vote. A lot of people don't vote. And I encourage everybody to vote, because someone died so you can have that right. Doesn't matter what your party is. It's the fact that, this is something that should be cherished, because not everybody has it.
Now, you mentioned that you joined, obviously you were active military, but you joined as an honorary member. Now, myself, who has never served, am I able to apply for honorary membership, or do I have to be asked, or how does that kind of work?
Well, the way it works there is that every chapter is entitled to have 15% honorary membership. And I believe the national president can change that if he wishes, just by okaying it. I would encourage you, if you have a belief that you want to support the cause, like patriotism, want to help out in some of these programs, and you want to participate in something that's meaningful to what we call Americanism, to your idea of what patriotism is. Yeah, absolutely. Talk to your local chapter and ask them if you can join. I would encourage you also to. Are you married?
I am, yes.
Bring your spouse with you and participate in some of their meetings to see what they do. To be clear, one of the things that we have also is we have an unofficial organization called the Camp Followers, and that's the ladies who support the Heroes of 76. They go through a degree of their own, and they are participants, and their leader is the Den Mother. and they help out.
Oh, wow.
Our chapter in particular in Fredericksburg had an organization. When I joined, the majority of the members in my chapter had kids, and the wife were coming over, but we had to have the kids come over as well because some of them were very young. And so we started what was called the Sojourners. The Sojourners were basically for the kids, and what they did is they started writing letters to the soldiers, and they would help out at the Quantico food baskets for some of the more needy military families. And they would pick up, when you get all these different items that you send over to the soldiers, they would participate in that as well. And those letters went out to the soldiers, thanking them from every one of these kids. They would do programs that had to do with inspiring them to love their country, and to love the military, and to help them out. Because, at the end, despite all the politics, those soldiers are there because they believe in what this country represents. We just hope that the government follows through with it, with the
Absolutely.
love that the people have. So, we don't try to fault the military for that.
Oh, absolutely not. So, yeah.
So, so the idea is that there's something for everybody. You should go ahead, and I encourage you to do so. One of the amazing things that we had a long time ago, about 2010, I believe it was, we had a Tyler at Fredericksburg Lodge by the name of Michel Ballon. Michel Ballon was French. He was a pilot. Michel Ballon, at the age 13, was part of the French resistance. And what he taught us was that 119, when the Nazis overran France and conquered it, part of it became occupied territory. The other part became, of course, Vichy France, which supported Nazi Germany. And his father was a Mason, and he told us the story, and he had the information to go with it, the data to go with it, that his father was one of the leaders of a lodge. 119 lodges got together and established the nucleus of what was originally the French resistance. And we have him, after we heard the story, I said, we got to get this recorded. And we did. We had him at the Sojourner meeting. He told the whole story, and we have it on YouTube out there. I wish I could give you the link on that. I can send it to you later on. But basically, you find that there was 119 lodges that started the French resistance. See, that's the thing. Through the National Sojourners, we were able to get this message out that Masonry is a natural network in any community. And when something bad happens, that natural network can actually be put into place to help the people. One of the other problems that we're facing is like Hurricane Katrina. One of the problems in New Orleans was that the police officers did not show up for work. Well, why? Because who's going to take care of the family? Who's going to protect the family? Well, Masonry, once again, is a natural network. If we put into place in our lodges some kind of safe house where a brother says, hey, when an emergency goes down, bring your family here, we'll protect them. They can do their jobs without worrying about what's going to happen to their family. Here in Virginia, Northern Virginia, you have Washington, D.C. We have brothers that when there's some kind of threat that's has to do with terrorism or even nuclear, they're running towards the problem, and they need to know the family's safe. Why aren't we setting up natural networks as such? But that was one of the things I learned from Michel Ballon, is that Masons can do these things. And like I said, I'll get you the YouTube on that, but it's a very inspiring story.
That.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're at that time of the show where we have to start wrapping things up. So I'm going to let our quiet gentleman, who's been very contemplative this evening, Juan Sepulveda, share his insights, final thoughts, and shameless plugs. Go ahead, Juan.
So I've been listening very carefully to what brothers have been posting in relation to our conversation, and some of the stories that have bubbled up in the comments are that people might have been interested in being part of the Sojourners until the whole nationalism component was brought up, and it made me think of one of the things that I've learned by reading some of the old Masonic writings when it comes to especially some of the early Masonic writings that came to us, some of them being in Spanish because of the Spanish conquest in the Caribbean, in Florida, among other areas. But where emphasizes the fact that in addition to not being able to speak about politics and religion, another thing that we don't talk about in Masonry traditionally is nationality. And I
True.
can understand how there is a divisiveness that is formed. You could have people that work here in the United States, and for them to be exposed to a fervent, um, I don't know, praise of America being the greatest country in the world, in a sense, may not be as welcomed, or it could create a division between, okay, we look at other people from other places as less than us because they come from there. So although I do appreciate and admire what the organization stands for, and it's to celebrate the efforts of the patriots in this country, we have to be very careful how we uh, characterize the organization, as to not present it perhaps as something that creates a division between us and them, but instead is more of a celebration of the history of what we've been. So,
I
uh,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, it is just a point that I wanted to make because, uh, granted, for people like you and I who have been on this side of the equation for the majority of our lives, it may come very natural. But if we have a brother who sits in lodge with us from Brazil, for example, they may love our fraternity as much as we do, and they may love the fact that they have the opportunity to express themselves freely in this country. They may not be as welcome to hear we are better. So, for the brothers
No, what
listening, I
they
want to
would
make
be.
uh-huh.
Can I say something to that?
Sure, sure, of course.
We've actually had brothers from Brazil. What they find is that they are inspired because they themselves have a patriotism for their country. They do some of the similar things that we do with their country. The Masons that made their country what it is, they have programs about them all the time, and it inspires them as well. We have an independent body that's based on that. They probably don't, but they probably do it through Blue Lodge. But they appreciate, and it would change for each person. There's some may not like it, and that may be understandable. I mean, what we try to do is we try to teach it as in a struggle of man, and how man tries to come up with something that's can make changes in the world, like the United States has done. There's nothing wrong with patriotism. There's nothing wrong with love. Even as a Mason, what we try to do is we try to translate that love and that patriotism into how it makes the world better for brothers to come together. Because there's some countries that, the fact of the matter, those countries that do not like the United States are also the same countries that if you are a Mason, you can actually put to jail or even killed. If you're thinking about it that way, there is some kind of synonymous relationship there.
Well, in some cases, of course, I wouldn't generalize and say that that's a direct correlation there, but I do go back to that whole point. Although we have organizations like the Sojourners that the emphasis to celebrate what has happened in the past, we have to be very careful how we position it so it doesn't come across as saying we are better than you. Because if we look at education, we are not better than most countries, to be honest. And there are many other aspects in which we're not on the top, and it takes it's a tough pill to swallow. But again, it's just creating that separation. Like, there are things that we need to be proud of and celebrate, but they can't come they can't be presented in a way that say, we're better than everyone else. Because guess what? Like, everyone on the other side, they think the same way, and they're also wrong.
Well,
But anyway,
one more thing to that.
Mhm.
Is that as in Masonry, we don't try to outdo each other or other people. We're trying to better ourselves. I think that goes hand in hand with what we try to teach in National Sojourners. We're trying to improve who we are.
Have you been to a Blue Lodge meeting?
To better. What's that?
Have you been to a Blue Lodge meeting recently? Everyone's trying
Yes,
to top
I
each
have.
other. Yes.
So the thing is that, but we also recognize that masonry is a pure thing.
Yeah.
It's what the people do with it that
Yep.
changes it.
All right.
Absolutely.
Each brother's got to work on his own asher, but that's
You
what
got
it is. It's bettering yourselves.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else, Juan?
That's it. I just wanted to invite brothers to check out the Winding Stairs on Monday. I have a really great conversation that I had with a brother, and it's going to ask some questions and it's going to answer some about
Ooh.
meditation, contemplation, and masonry. Check it out.
Nice.
Ooh.
All right. Robert Johnson, you're next up.
Well, okay. I really liked it. I didn't know anything about the National Sojourners, other than Hardy Evans at my old lodge was a member, and I saw them bring in the colors once at Grand Lodge. It was the 76 group. Totally cool. I agree with a lot of the points we talked about tonight, and I think what's important to think about is our brother, our guest on the show, was mentioning this idea of at certain times our countries come together to defeat, two world wars and to come together and do these kind of things. And when we think about that stuff, it speaks to the resilience of, I guess, what we can do. I won't say nationalism, right? Because I just say I like the term Americanism when we think about it that way. Because for me, that term drives home this idea of the melting pot. We have so many people who come here from all over the world to experience these freedoms that we've set up, and yeah, a lot of countries have emulated us in the past, and maybe they have, like as Juan said, have surpassed us in areas like education or whatever. But the point is to have a bit of pride about where we are in America, in our way of coming together to solve our problems, and just to not to celebrate so much what we are, but to celebrate the idea of the constant ability to keep ourselves in check and to push a better way for a better tomorrow every time, where we're looking at these things over time with our political structure and all that. So I thought it was a really cool episode. I would invite you guys to check out Whence Came You podcast Sunday nights, 9:30, and just launched a new website for the Whence Came You podcast. Just an update, so it looks a little nicer. You'll notice that our producer's pin design is actually at the top now, which was designed by our buddies. We had Jason Richards do this last one, and pretty rad. So thanks to Jason
It's
for
based off
his-
of Juan's design, though.
Yeah, Juan designed the original WCY logo, actually, and then Jason did the latest pin design. So thanks to you two gentlemen for all you've done for the Whence Came You podcast, and thanks everybody out there for tuning into this episode tonight. This was awesome. Thanks.
Okay. Next up, Mike the intern. How are you?
So I really liked getting to know more about the National Sojourners. I'd heard about it before, but I hadn't known too much about, the ability for non-military to join it. I understood the reasoning behind, the idea of just being military. It's a great idea. But now that I know I might be able to, reach out and learn something from it and join it and help out as well, I think that's a great thing. So, I'm going to look more into that. But no, I've thought that the National Sojourners from the first time I heard about them was a great organization. So, and thank you for coming on our show and sharing all this with us, because honestly, this is something very new. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next up, Jason. Final thoughts. Shameless plugs.
So I'll just reiterate, if you ever get the chance to see the National Sojourners or the Heroes of 76 do the Build the Flag program, it's a really fascinating look at the history of the flag of the United States, and it's just a really, really cool program. So, Brother Shelby, thanks so much for coming onto the show. Really interesting appendant body. And just an interesting conversation as well. So really, really appreciate it. So for everybody out there watching, thanks so much for watching week after week. We're excited to come back here next week and share some more Masonic education with you. I'm ramping down my speaking engagements for the year, but it's already looking like next year is going to be absolutely nuts. So if you're interested in having any of us on the Masonic Roundtable do a virtual presentation or come out to your lodge, you can go to the TMR website, www.themasonic.roundtable.com, and you can see how to get in touch with us there. We'd love to come out and share some Masonic knowledge with y'all. And with that, I will turn it back over to John.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Brother Shelby, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us about your wealth of knowledge and detail. And we really do appreciate the time that you spent going through all of the intricacies of this fascinating body with a lot of rich patriotism and history. And so for that, again, I want to extend a heartfelt thanks on behalf of all of us here.
And thanks to Joe M. for his amazing super chat. America, we love you, Joe.
America, how appropriate. So it's been great to have a lively discussion on patriotism, nationalism, Americanism, and what it means to be an American Freemason, and how it can extend upon all of us here. And so again, thank you for everything, and that's all we got for this week. So for all of you who've stuck around, thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.